Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel BNB Daily Spoiler. Eric drops a bombshell. Bill and Katie can never tell.
Monday, February 2nd spoiler for The Bold and the Beautiful. Katie and Bill swear to secrecy. Eric reveals surprise. Bill Spencer and Katie Logan Spencer will be sworn to silence, but Eric Forster will reveal a surprise. Monday's episode of B&B should give the week a new beginning after such a long soap opera day. The Logan Group hasn't been accessible to viewers in a long time, but good news is on the way. After appointing Eric as her lead designer, Katie now believes her fashion house is in good hands. Katie is certain that she won't be let down because she has complete faith in Eric's skill and background. However, when Eric presents his new concepts, Katie will be even more surprised than she anticipated. Katie will be overjoyed when Eric shares some designs because they perfectly align with her vision for Logan. Naturally, Eric will be happy to provide Katie with something she likes, and he will want to position her for success. Eric will be happy he came out of retirement for this job because it allows him to follow his passion and feel valuable once more. The only reason Katie and Eric's arrangement is working out so far is that nobody at Forster Creations is aware of it. Katie and Bill will reassure Eric that his secret is secure as he reiterates his wish to maintain the status quo for the time being. Eric is only delaying the inevitable since the truth will eventually come to light. In fact, if Ridge Forster and Brooke Logan Forster are later caught off guard, this delay might make things worse. In the meantime, Dylan must decide how to respond to Ivy Forster's ultimatum. Ivy threatened to tell Electra Forster everything she saw if Dylan didn't take a wad of cash and leave town. Will Dylan follow Ivy's advice and pretend she found a job far away? In any case, after meeting RJ Forster at Forster Creations, Dylan will eventually stay and might develop an intriguing relationship with him. Keep an eye out for any noteworthy romantic developments because spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful indicate that RJ, Dylan, Electra, and Will Spencer will form an intriguing love quartet. Spoilers for the next 2 weeks of The Bold and the Beautiful. Deacon promises Taylor, Ridge becomes enraged, and Liam learns Eric's secret. Scene 1 of Week 1, Eric's study. Eric Forster sat in his study with the deliberate, leisurely calm of a man who had seen many things fold and refold. His hands, which had held textiles and fortunes, were leaning against a leather chair's arms. Across from him, in a dim light that seemed to encourage soft confessions, stood Deacon Sharp. Deacon had experienced hardships, rehabilitation, and a protracted return to a life that was simpler to destroy than to rebuild. Suddenly, there was an uneasiness about him that was more raw than haughty. Eric, you don't have to, Deacon paused. The way Eric grinned while offering counsel that smelled of both peril and salvation. He hesitated before saying, I am not stupid. I only do favors for people I believe in. I understand what you have gone through. I also understand what Taylor meant to you once, and what she means to you right now. I am aware of her complexity. However, I do think that second chances are possible. Deacon's eyes lit up with almost childlike appreciation at that precise moment. I swear I won't screw it up. Eric leaned forward. Deacon, you don't have access to the company's board, but this is a small opportunity to consult on a community outreach line for the Forster Foundation. It's good exposure, and it will show Taylor that you're serious. I'm not expecting you to promise me perfection. I'm asking you to demonstrate that you can keep a promise. The mixture of hope and fear that has been Deacon's honest currency hardened his voice. How about Ridge? Eric's face turned wary, then accommodative. He folded his hands and said, Ridge, I will not lie. He will not like it. But sometimes you have to do things that cause waves to protect the tides from washing away what is important. There are no headlines, no pomp, and things are still calm for the time being. If you break it for everybody, with a weight and a key. A real key to a small collection of archives, as well as a promise to treat the privilege with kindness. Deacon left Eric's study. Eric shut the door and, by himself in the quiet, muttered, Do the right thing, Deacon. Unbeknownst to them both, a man stopped in the hallway. Liam Spencer. Liam had been long overdue for a visit. He had come to see how Eric was doing, to offer the kind of friendly kindness that often conceals a journalist's interest. He had only planned to stay for a short while, and he hadn't anticipated learning about the complexities of the arrangement. Deacon's consulting role, the opportunity's covert nature, and Eric's insistence on confidentiality. Liam took a step back, his breath caught in the manner of a man watching an open fault line. He knew, intuitively, that if Ridge found out that Eric had given Deacon a foothold, the consequences would be immediate and dire. His expression wavered between shock and alarm. This was not gossip to be disregarded. It was a delicate, flammable promise that could ruin the lives of several people who had no say in the deal. With the words embedded like seeds in his breast, he disappeared before anyone could see him. Scene 2 of Week 1. Conference Room, Forrester Creations. Unable to bear the news, Liam did what he always did when the stakes were high. He went to see a Forrester, but not the one you would expect, and found Hope, who had become the family's unofficial emotional regulator. News in Los Angeles rarely arrived softly. Instead, it was a rumor that grew angrier with time. "Hope," he muttered as he paced. "Are you aware that Eric has been setting up Deacon's consultation?" He gave him access to Foundation initiatives. He did not tell Ridge. Hope furrows her brow. "What?" "Ridge and Deacon have a history that goes beyond friction. They have conflicts. That will be dangerous." Liam's mouth tightened. "Exactly. Ridge would never allow it. He'd consider it as betrayal. Not for Deacon's sake, but because he'd always treated the corporation as sacred ground." Hope's tone became softer. "Do you trust Eric?" "Liam, do you trust Deacon?" "I believe the person who acknowledged his errors and made an effort to correct them," Liam said, letting out an impatient breath. "But Ridge is also someone I know." He fell silent, saying, "I should not have overheard it. If Ridge views this as a betrayal, it will ruin more than just a consulting contract. But now I have to choose between telling Ridge and keeping his secret." "You have to think about who will be hurt," Hope said, eyeing him with the firm empathy of someone who understood boundaries and the dangers of secrecy. "Deacon's chances could be ruined before they start if he tells Ridge. You're storing something that will eventually blow up if you don't." Liam's choices seemed like a labyrinth from which there was no way out. This was another test of whether confrontation or secrecy would work better for a man who had learned hard lessons about loyalty and past scars. Scene 3 of Week 1. The wrath begins in Ridge's office. Shocks did not sit well with Ridge Forrester. His anger was sharpened like a tool, and he approached knowledge with a sharp eye. It was like a splinter under his skin when the news, or rather, the suspicion, came to him. At the worst possible moment, Liam blurted out the half-truths he had heard while Ridge was in a board meeting. Liam clarified, "It's not that Eric likes Deacon, but he's letting him inside Forrester operations by arranging for Deacon to work on a Foundation project." Ridge's stance changed. The space grew more cramped. "Are you certain about this?" "I have heard it," Liam swallowed. "I did not mean to." Ridge's face hardened. "Eric has always had his own way of doing things, but we have to deal with it if he's compromising the company's integrity by giving access to Forrester assets to a man who has a violent past and has been convicted." There was a chill in Ridge's voice, but it wasn't anger. Rather, it was the heightened awareness of someone who had recognized a possible danger to his legacy. Without a word, Ridge barged into his father's study that evening. The altercation was abrupt and heated. "Eric," Ridge said, bracing himself against the trembling of his anger with his hands on the desk, "what have you been doing?" Eric appeared to be aware that he was going to receive a history lecture, as evidenced by the damage to his face. "Ridge, I think it's important to give people a chance. I've known Deacon for a long time and have watched him try. I wanted to help Taylor." The Foundation. Ridge's interruption was like a knife. "You know that a controversy could get out of control, so you want to support Taylor at the expense of our company's reputation? Deacon is not an adequate risk." "You're making it personal," Eric said, folding his hands. "I'm not attempting to discredit Forrester Creations. I'm attempting to act in people's best interests." "Right by the people," Ridge said, raising his voice. "When stockholders hear this, do you know what right by people means? Do you realize what happens to families when you start playing rescuer without thinking about the people whose names you use?" As is frequently the case between a father and son, pride and principle clashed during the heated exchange. Ridge's anger had the harsh geometry of someone who was afraid the stability of the family would turn against the man he wanted to be. Ridge added, almost in a whisper, "Don't expect the family to clean up the mess if you make this choice without me." Eric winced, but he wouldn't give up because he had made his moral decision based more on kindness than legacy. He said to me, "I will not be asked to unlearn my conscience. If that costs me, so be it." A new rift in the Forrester universe was revealed by the split. Personal mercy versus family values. Scene 1 of Week 2. Deacon's promise in Taylor's apartment. Logic and language had always been Taylor Hayes' guiding principles. She experienced the familiar friction in her chest when Deacon reappeared in her life, awkward, apologetic, and providing the kind of warmth that was both reckless and genuine. Betrayal and forgiveness had tainted their past, and love had been both a haven and a danger. "Deacon," Taylor said softly, using the clinical, flat tone that had previously helped her achieve academic success. "You can't expect me to just accept this because someone thought it was a good PR move." Deacon tightened his jaw. "I understand. I'm not asking for an instant pardon. Rather, I'm asking for the chance to improve myself as a man for you and everyone else in my life. I made a commitment to Eric that I would work hard, take responsibility for my actions, and evaluate myself daily." Despite herself, Taylor's eyes softened. "In our family, promises are crucial. They lack the bandwidth to make basic mistakes, though. Ridge is going to snap. Liam will feel conflicted. You know what this will do." Deacon straightened, quiet resolve taking the place of desperation in his voice. "I understand, and I promise that I won't play the cunning Deacon you recall. No more lies or half-truths. If Ridge wants to fight, I'll take the blows, but I won't lie to you, and I won't let the past define us if I can stop it." As a woman of reason and science assessing a variable, Taylor saw his sincerity. "That's a big promise. It's the only one I know how to keep now," Deacon clarified. "Let me show you." More beseeching than desire, they clasped. Taylor, who had become adept at evaluating every risk, viewed the pledge as a challenging agreement rather than a cure-all. She could accept it or reject it in order to defend herself. Like everything else in that unstable orbit, the choice would have repercussions. Ridge's counterattack in Scene 2 of Week 2. Ridge was unable to do nothing. He prepared a response, whether it was due to his passion for the family name, his need for control, or his highly specialized muscle memory as a man who handled crises for a living. In an apparent attempt to carry out a standard governance review, he called a meeting of board members, legal counsel, and a few close family confidants. "My father's actions have consequences," Ridge said calmly, furiously. "I cannot allow the enterprise to be jeopardized in the name of personal philanthropy. We need to assess what kind of access, if any, Deacon has been provided." A compromise was suggested by Carter, who often played the diplomat while Ridge played the artillery. "We need to evaluate the risk," he said. "Maybe a background check, a trial period under supervision, or temporary oversight." Ridge gave a flash. "No, we are a company that needs continuity, not improvisation. We need to evaluate Eric's ability to use Forrester assets however he sees fit." Beneath the legalese, the real conflict was personal, but the discussion turned to procedural details like contracts, confidentiality restrictions, and legal liability. While the older Forrester felt deceived by Ridge's lack of compassion, Ridge felt deceived by Eric's unilateral choice. It was more of a stalling strategy than a solution when the board decided to delay the foundation's new project until after oversight. But it was sufficient to thwart Deacon's attempts and intensify the conflict. Scene 3 of Week 2, Liam's choice. Liam watched the consequences with the personal grief that only people on both sides can feel. At first, he hadn't told Ridge. By keeping the secret like a blister in the hopes that it would heal, he had attempted to shield Deacon. But Ridge's outspoken opposition to the Foundation initiative seemed to be an accusation against Eric's moral agency, as well as Deacon. He knew he had to decide. He could defend the few opportunities available to a man trying to change, or he could stand by Ridge and keep the company safe. He thought about his own transgressions and how redemption could occasionally seem like small favors. He thought about Taylor's forgiveness and nobility. Weary and defiant, he walked into Ridge's office. "I apologize for not telling you, but Dad," he said, "I overheard Eric. However, you're not seeing the whole picture. Deacon is making an effort. Eric makes an effort to act morally. We don't need to base our decision on hearsay." "You kept this from me," Ridge said, his face displaying the slow agony of a man who expected his family to be more faithful. "I was trying to protect people," Liam said plainly. "Sometimes protection looks like giving a person chance, not pulling the rug out from under them the second they step into a room." "I'm not naive, Liam," Ridge said, softening his voice with the weight of a leader weighing the terms of authority rather than out of surrender. "I've seen how men like Deacon can exploit others. However, I am not a god who is absent and dictates all moral choices." Ridge agreed to meet with Deacon in private, look him in the eye, and determine whether mercy and protection might be proportionate. Although their reconciliation was not easy, the slight thaw, Liam's bravery to speak and Ridge's willingness to listen, changed the equation. Scene 4 of Week 2, The Promise and the Confrontation. The meeting between Ridge and Deacon in the Forrester boardroom was as tight as a violin string. Ridge was initially obstinate, inquiring about past transgressions, lies, and manipulations, to which Deacon responded with sincere humility instead of groveling. He acknowledged his wrongdoings, routines, and how he had hurt Taylor and others. He calmly and desperately explained the smallness of his current life and the magnitude of his desire to be better. Ridge finally said, "You can only ask me to see whether you changed. You have no right to ask me to trust you." "I will do anything," Deacon said in a trembling voice. "I'll be watched over. I'll reveal everything. I'll perform more community service than is appropriate. I'll let anyone see how I'm doing. But please, don't punish Taylor for my mistakes before I have an opportunity to make amends." Ridge paced and then stopped, his anger seeming to fill the room for a long moment before he breathed. His eyes were like furnaces. "Fine," he replied. "This is a short-term error. Severe restrictions. You're out if you even breathe incorrectly. And if you hurt Taylor," he didn't finish because no one asked him to. With tears in his eyes, Deacon nodded and turned to face Taylor, who had quietly entered the room. "I promise you, Taylor, no more past," he said, reaching for her hand. "I promise to be truthful, and I promise that you will never have to decide between your dignity and me." Taylor looked at him, the scientist estimating the likelihood of a shift. She gently grasped his hand, as though gauging the steam's temperature. "That's a promise I'll hold you to," she continued. Ridge left the room with the kind of restrained anger that would form the basis of a narrative that would unfold over the course of the next 2 weeks. How a man defended his legacy and how the man who created it made the difficult decision to show mercy. Liam stayed behind, observing the exchange of promises and apologies, reluctant compromises, and shaking new agreements. Epilogue: Precarity and Promise. By the end of the 2 weeks, nothing had been settled in the neat way that daytime dramas sometimes give their viewers. Instead of being abandoned, the Foundation initiative had been postponed. Deacon had a key to a small archive, a supervised position, and a lengthy journey to daily validation of his reliability. The Forrester board had placed boundaries around mercy, and Ridge's anger had been subdued. Practicality had forced him to compromise with his conscience. Stung by the family's response, but unwavering in his conviction, Eric stood by his choice, prepared to deal with any criticism from media. Liam had discovered a secret and learned how to carefully protect it. He had opted for the difficult middle path of advocacy and honesty rather than cowardice or cruelty. Deacon's assurance had been met with the cautious suspicion of a scientist. Like a jury in a slow trial, the town would follow each small step of Deacon's promised change. The town leaned in hungry all the time. Like springtime pollen, rumors proliferate. Board meetings, possible leaks, and a test of trust between those in love and those compelled to make a decision were all part of the next 2 weeks. As we approached the upcoming weeks, one thing was certain. Every character had been forced to reveal their hand. While some had emphasized control, others had doubled down on generosity, and still others had folded or bluffed. A tabloid that smelled a story A councilman who wanted to use Deacon's past politically, a tender moment between Taylor and Deacon that might influence even Ridge, and Eric's final, painful choice, publicly defending Deacon that will either honor his conscience or cost him his role, would all be part of the upcoming scenes. In the world of soap operas, anger is the weather and promises are the currency. Deacon had assured Taylor that it would be for the time being. Eric's secret was known to Liam. Despite his anger, Ridge paid attention. The next 2 weeks would decide whether second chances were a luxury or a right, and whether men who keep score could control love in any form. Roll credits for tonight's show, but keep an eye out because secrets, like spring storms, seldom remain hidden in Los Angeles, where the weather can change quickly.